Welcome to the Help Us Here podcast, brought to you by the Beyond Compulsion Academy. My name is Thomas Molyneux. I struggled with pornography addiction for many years, and for a period of time, I sort of convinced myself, okay, I'm just going to not watch porn. So that was like the goal, is like just don't go on a porn site, basically. And this is actually before I learned the Beyond Compulsion method. I managed to achieve that goal, and I went maybe 2 or 3 years without watching pornography as such on a porn site. However, in that time, so this was like back in probably between somewhere like 2020 and maybe 2023, it was around that period. What I did is I ended up basically just going on social media instead, and I'd be seeking out sexual content on there. You know, often it just start out seemingly innocent, a bit of the explore page as it was, you know, looking at some women on there, maybe there's some slightly sexual content. Then I'd like click into these hashtags, because there used to be these hashtags on Instagram back then, and I'd like click into them and have this weird compulsive game going on with myself where I'd be like trying to jump from hashtag to hashtag to try find the most sexual content. But then in my head at the time, I was like, this is okay, it's not porn, I'm not actually doing anything too bad here, this is all right. And then I'd end up, you know, masturbating over the most extreme novel content I could possibly find on things like Instagram. I do the same sort of thing on X. I do the same thing on, what else was there? TikTok, I think, more in like 2023 when that came about. And then, yeah, YouTube as well. You know, you can find a lot of sexual content on YouTube. So that's what I was doing. Now, I've also had periods in my life when I've had blockers installed. So things like restrictions on your phone. There was this app that I was on for years and years called Brain Buddy, and you could actually use that to like block adult websites as well, I believe. So I had that installed for like quite a while. I've tried other blockers in the past as well, actually. I remember for a period of time, I had this like blocker that was like an extension that I had in like, I found it in Google, and you could like block sites on it. So I had that for a while. I've never actually tried out Covenant Eyes, which I know is like probably the most popular one that I hear like people using. I never tried that one out, but I have tried out a couple of different blockers that I found in the extensions, usually free stuff. And then there's like paid app called Brain Buddy as well. So I've got quite a lot of experience using blockers. And what I want to talk about today is why I recommend my clients to actually uninstall blockers when they're trying to stop watching porn, which I know sounds very backwards. I know there's a lot of resistance to this. I know most people listening will be probably against what I say at first, so there'll be at least some resistance here. And I want to just explain the philosophy and methodology behind my thinking here, why I do think long-term for success, and even short-term, like if you want to, you know, do this right away, I don't think it's necessarily a bad idea. Like why I personally think it's good to uninstall your blockers. So, you know, I just shared that story, right? How for like 2 or 3 years, my life wasn't great. I was in this like up and down cycle where I'd go on a streak, and then I'd convince myself that I wasn't going to watch porn. I'd convince myself the stuff I was seeking wouldn't be that bad. And I'd basically find a way around the fact that I told myself I wouldn't watch porn on a porn site. So, you know, I'd be going down these like crazy loops on social media to try find the sexual content with this bullshit thought that, well, this isn't porn, so it's okay. And even when you have blockers in place, what people tend to do is go down some pretty extreme routes to try and find some porn. And I have heard from clients of mine all sorts of stories. I'm not going to share any. I'm not going to share any because, you know, confidentiality, and, you know, I don't really want to share right now because some of the stories are actually really recent, like recent stories that I've heard from people. But look, I've heard some pretty extreme stuff when it comes to getting around blockers, the lengths that people will go to find that porn content. And yeah, it really reminds me of the days when I'd like find the stuff on social media. So that's what happens, is what people do eventually is they'll find a way around the blocker. And sometimes this can be after like 1 year of abstinence. So there's a lot of stories I actually want to share here. But again, I'm not going to. I'm going to refrain from doing so just due to confidentiality. But the things that people will do when they've had the blockers in place for like a long period as well, they can get even more extreme with time. So what's going on here? Like, why are people still seeking out the sexual content when they've got the blockers in place? Well, it's quite simple from my perspective, my understanding of this issue. What happens is most people, they get addicted to porn from a really young age. So, it can be maybe, let's say, 11 or 12 years old. You get addicted to porn. I think I was 12, right? So I was 12. And you get addicted to porn. So you're looking at the porn, maybe you're doing this quite regularly. Maybe you're not really fully aware of the consequences. It's really young. There's some people even younger. So you're looking at this content over and over. And what happens is you basically wire your brain to want to watch this content. So now what you've done is you've got these pathways in your brain, which go from wanting to engage in the behavior to acting on it. And then what happens? If you go and install a blocker, you're telling yourself, okay, well, I can't look at porn because I'm blocked from it. So now there's this thing you still want because you've wired your brain to want it, but then simultaneously, you're telling yourself, oh, I can't do it. And when you're in that place where you want to do something and you feel like you can't do it, it's just creating a lot of resistance. So now you probably want to do it even more. So now you end up going down these extreme paths to try and access the porn. As I say, this might be after many, many months of having the blockers installed. It might even be after over 1 year. I've worked with a lot of guys who have gone over 1 year without porn, only to return to it. And then in their addiction or their compulsion, their problem, it just gets way worse. And then that first time when they go and access that content that they feel so like deprived of, this thing that they've wanted so much and they've been unable to access, or they thought they've been unable to access it, what they then do is they go completely out of control, fully binging, edging. Oh, I'll start again tomorrow. I've got to get in as much as possible now. I've got to, do this as much as possible. And it's very, very similar to someone who binge eats, who's like restricting themselves with some kind of diet. And then eventually they have like a cheat day or whatever, and they just get completely out of control. And I was on that cycle, that sort of roller coaster ride of ups and downs, like stopping it for a while, then doing it and going really sort of all in and extreme and getting completely out of control, then stopping it, and it's back and forth. And we don't want to be in that cycle. It's not a good place. Like when you zoom out of that as a whole and you look at maybe how long, like a good couple of questions to sort of consider for yourself is like, when did I first start looking at porn, let's say? When did I want to stop it? It's like, how long have I been trying to stop it? And then like, how old am I now? So like, I'll often ask someone this, like when I first talk to them. And for me, it was like, so it was 12 when I first started watching the porn. I had erectile dysfunction at 16. I discovered NoFap. I was like, okay, I'm going to try and stop watching porn. That was when I was 16. And it was not until I was like 25 that I actually learned how to stop this behavior, which is a long time to be in that roller coaster ride of doing it and stopping for a bit, then doing it and stopping and doing it. That's a long, long time. Like when you zoom out of it, you look back and you're like, wow, I was actually in that bad place for many, many years. And I think what happens when you're in the addiction and you have like something like a blocker in place, you can be like, okay, well, this blocker's helping me because I've gone a few weeks or I've gone a few months without engaging in the behavior. And so you look at that and you think, well, that's progress. But what I think people really ought to do is like zoom out big time and go, hang on, have I still got this problem or is it solved? Like, am I fully in control of myself or am I still struggling with this issue? And as far as I'm concerned, if you've got a blocker in place, you haven't yet retrained your brain to go, okay, I can deal with any desire at any moment, at any time, and be 100% in control of myself. If you're still blocking yourself on some level, you are telling yourself, okay, well, I can't access this stuff. And really that's based in this helpless mentality of, if I have access to it, I'm going to relapse. So on some level, by having a blocker in place, in my opinion, you are telling yourself, I don't trust myself because if I have access to it, I'm going to get out of control. At least for me and my clients, the goal is to get to a position where you feel 100% in control of yourself and you don't have that fear of, what if I have the desire? Because, it's not about whether you have the desire or not. It's not about whether you have access or not. What matters, like what is a good sign of, whether you're succeeding with this problem or not, is whether you have that ability to deal with the desire. Between stimulus and response, there is a space. And it's within that space that you have a choice. It's within that space that you really have like power. Viktor Frankl said something very similar. He's a Holocaust survivor. And, this kind of philosophy, this mentality, I think it's so crucial, especially in this day and age where we have so much potential stimulus, sort of thrown at us in our face, all the bullshit everywhere, all the advertising, all the nonsense out there in the world that's trying to get our attention. It's more important now than ever to be able to deal with that gap between that stimulus and that response. So in that space right there, that gap between when you have that desire and how you respond, that is the thing to work on. That is the most important thing. And so that's why I don't believe having a blocker in place is going to lead to the long-term success that I would want for a client. Now, I get that a lot of people are going to say, well, look, what a blocker can do is just kind of help you pause a little bit before accessing the content, help you maybe think through it a little bit. And okay, I get that argument. And if blockers do work for you and, you feel like you're fully succeeding with the blockers in place, good, crack on, do your thing. That's absolutely fine. But what I just want to get across is like, if you're going to come and work with me and work and learn the Beyond Compulsion method, we are going to tell you at some point to uninstall those blockers. We are going to tell you that. And I know this isn't going to go well. It's not going to go down well with everybody. And that's absolutely fine because our method is different. And I'm very, very confident in saying that, look, for long-term results, I think uninstalling blockers is absolutely the way to go. Whether at the start, whether in the middle, whether at the end, whenever, because I just believe the present moment is the present moment. And it doesn't matter whether you uninstall them right now or in 2 years. My mental stance is just moment by moment. Blockers should always really be uninstalled if you want to feel completely mentally free. That is my take, all right? And yeah, I'm very much an advocate for that. Now, if you do not have any idea how to deal with your own mind, with your own desires, then yeah, sure, maybe keep the blockers in place. But the goal, at least at some point in your life, I believe, if you want real freedom, is going to be to learn to deal with those desires, okay? And if you have the blockers in place, you're just restricting yourself, and it can make the issue a lot worse, especially over a longer period of time. So there we are. That's my take on all of this. I hope this helps someone. I hope it just provides a different perspective on it and maybe gives someone hope, because you know what it is, right? There's so many guys that I talk to who feel completely hopeless. They feel really, really unsure of themselves, and they feel like they're just going to be stuck in this porn addiction for the rest of their life. And they feel like, they're trying everything and, they're still failing, they're still relapsing, and there can be so much shame there. And what I love about our method is that it's so radically different to anything else out there that it does inspire people and help them see that, holy shit, maybe there isn't anything wrong with me. It is just the things I'm trying, and maybe the things you're trying are not working. And, I've tried a lot of the things that most people have tried as well. They didn't work for me over a longer period of time. This method, the Beyond Compulsion method, is so focused on how do you respond to your desire? How do you deal with the addictive part of the mind, as we call it? And that to me is the most important thing out there by an absolute mile. But it's not easy. It is uncomfortable at times. There's a lot to learn. And there's a lot of work to do, really, if you want to overcome this issue. But having an artificial external measure in place isn't really going to be the one when the problem is an internal psychological one that goes on in the mind. But there we are. If you would like to learn a little bit about changing the way you think and actually feeling more in control of yourself and more free, starting to begin to think in a way where you feel like, yeah, okay, I have a choice here, and get out of feelings of deprivation, which are absolutely massive with regards to this issue, then you can look into buying Fact 1 and Fact 2. Fact 1 and Fact 2 is a short video. It's about 29 minutes long. Costs $29, so it's not a particularly expensive thing. You don't have to buy this, obviously. But basically, that training with Fact 1 and Fact 2 is going to give you the opportunity to start connecting to that pathway of compulsive desire. That might not even make sense right now, but what we're going to do with the first two facts is just get you trained on being aware that you have a desire, knowing there's nothing wrong with you for having that desire, and then getting out of feelings of deprivation by understanding that you have a choice and that you're not deprived of porn. Like, porn's always going to be there. You can always access the porn. And then what you'd want to do with these first two facts, they're not going to solve your whole porn addiction. So if you think like, this is me trying to sell you a product that's going to completely end your porn addiction, then I'm sorry, but it isn't. I'm not going to be able to do that with just like a little $29, 29-minute video, right? But it's going to get you started on the Beyond Compulsion method. It can give you a good sense of the sort of work we do with our clients. It's the same first two facts that everyone I work with and I myself use. So it's the same first two facts that are part of the 5-fact script, but it's a bit of a taster really for our full program. And actually a lot of guys have said to us, look, these first two facts, they've really, really changed the way I think about things, and they've been really, really valuable, and a lot more valuable than like going to therapy and paying a ton of money for loads and loads of sessions, when in fact what you can do is start to actually change the way you think about things through repetition. And what you'd want to do if you do go ahead and buy these first two facts is use them as much as possible. We're talking like 100 times a day. And it's really going to start to change the way you feel. But you'd probably want to uninstall the blockers as well if you are going to do that. But yeah, there we are. All right, thank you for listening. Hopefully it's useful to you. Hopefully it gives you a different take on things. I'll leave a link below to his first two facts if you want to have a look into buying that. Cheers again, and we'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.